Today, we would like to talk to you about our first year on the road. But not only would we like to talk to you about it, we would also like to pass along some wisdom that we've gained for the past year that might be able to help you out in the future. If you're new here, my name is Trey.
Oh, I'm Jess.
And typically we are, did I put you on the spot there?
You did.
And typically we're traveling around the States in our 36-foot Jayco Eagle. And honestly, we have some catching up to do with you guys. Because in our last video of 2024, we had finally made it home to go see our friends and family. But that was about a month and a half ago. Since we were home, I was able to run a 5K on a turkey trot run, which is my first ever competitive run. And we also went to Japan for 2 weeks with some friends, and we got to see the Thousand Torii Gates, eat a bunch of ramen, and explore about 5 different cities or so.
Sure did.
Which was incredible. It was a great time. Japan is impressive by all accounts, and we are already planning on our return trip probably in a couple years.
Maybe next year? So when we got back from Japan, we were expecting to immediately move all of our things back in and go to the next reserve campground, which is where we're at right now. But things didn't go as planned, and we can actually link up a video where you guys can see what exactly happened, on why the delay took as long as it did, some of the complications that we came across along the way. But ultimately, we're here now, and that's the important thing.
We are back. So with a little bit of downtime, we thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and share some of our 2024 highlights and some of the things that we've learned along the way. So in some form or another, hopefully it helps you out in your 2025. But before we get into everything, I do want to share with you 11 quick stats, and I'm just going to read them off here, that I was able to figure out, kind of calculate a few things, which surprised me of what we've done in 2024. So let's start with, we passed through 19 states in total. That's a lot. Number 2, we stayed at least one night in at least 13 of those 19 states. And number 3, we stayed at least 1 week or more in 11 of those states. And we'll get more into what that looked like pacing wise here in a second. Okay, number 4, we drove roughly 10,201.3 miles in 2024 with the RV hitched up. We did put on a little more than that, but with the RV hitched up, that was a little over 10,000 miles. Does that surprise you? Because I thought we had done a little bit more.
I thought so too. I was literally just about to say that, like, when you first told me that, I couldn't believe it. I thought we had done, like, way more.
And for reference, the truck has about 30,000 miles on it now. And when we hit the road, we had about 10,000 miles on it. All right, number 5. The state we spent the most time in last year was Washington, right at 10 weeks.
No surprise.
We spent all of summer up there. Number 6. The states that we spent the least amount of time was 1 night apiece in New Mexico and Montana. Did that surprise you? I don't know, I feel like we spent a little bit more in Montana, but no, it was just one night.
It was just one night.
Number 7, we visited 11 national parks, which
That was pretty cool.
Was awesome, but we're gonna get more into some of our favorites and least favorites in a second. Number 8, and I don't think this is gonna surprise anybody, our most expensive state by far was California.
Love you, California. You're beautiful. You're just a little pricey.
And at the time of recording this, our heart goes out to everybody affected by the Palisades fire, all the other fires that are going on around the Southern California area. So
here's some links for you to be able to look up and research and donate if possible.
Which brings us to number 9. Our least expensive state was Oklahoma. Gas, groceries, everything over there was just on point, I would say.
Could have done without the tornadoes, but
yeah. Number 10. Our cheapest per night stay for full hookups was $16 a night.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, for 50 amps, full hookup, $16 a night, that is spoiling yourself.
And since we're talking about our cheapest per night stay, it only stands to reason to mention our most expensive per night stay, which was
$75 per night.
And that was?
In Washington. That was near Mount Rainier in Washington. And that's it, guys. That's our 11 quick stats for the year. And sorry we're filming this inside. I really wanted to do this outside in front of the RV somewhere, but we had a big snow day yesterday and last night, so we're kind of snowed in right now, and it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little chilly outside.
Let's talk about some fun stuff. Let's get into our route in 2024.
Where did we go? So we started off down in Texas. We've talked about that all the time. We started in actually Alamo, Texas. We stayed there for 2 weeks, and which was kind of the theme for our travels last year. That was our average pace, was every 2 weeks, which, you know, kind of worked out with some of our memberships. But we started down in Alamo, Texas, then moved to Big Bend, Texas for 2 weeks.
Well, that was essentially the reason why we did 2 week stays, is because of our membership. So
in February, we finished up Big Bend and then went over to Arizona, where we stayed 2 weeks in Sonoita, Arizona. So in March, we took our first ever month-long stay in northern Arizona in Kabab Paiute, which was a beautiful Indian reservation up there and was a good base for most of the national parks in northern Arizona and southern Utah. But the Grand Canyon was closed at that point in time, so
the closest road to get to the Grand Canyon was closed because of the snow. We could have looked at different alternatives, but it was about a 4-hour and some change drive, which unfortunately we could not do.
In April, we head over from Arizona to California, Southern California, in Palm Springs, where we stayed 2 weeks, which is absolutely beautiful. And then from there, we go from Southern California all the way up to Yosemite, which is kind of like in the central part of California. The start of May, we head over to Russian River, California for 2 weeks. And then in June, we break into Oregon, where we stay a weekend in Crater Lake and then stay 2 weeks in Mount Hood before making it another 2 weeks over to the coast in Pacific City.
Which was still chilly, but felt nice. Too chilly to get into the water, but
that's where we ran our first 10K on the beach.
10K on the beach. That was just such a check off of my list moment for me.
And in mid-July, we break into Washington, where we stayed 2 weeks near Mount Rainier. And then we get to go see Olympic for a weekend. Then Grundy Creek for 2 weeks before making it over to East Washington, where we got to stay a night in Palisades, which if you haven't been to Palisades, Washington yet, and if you've only experienced the westernmost part, the Pacific Northwest part of Washington, Palisades is a much different vibe. It is a desert out there, very beautiful. And that was the winery that we stayed at, right? Where the AC didn't work?
Yeah, we Hip Camp. Well, the AC didn't work because you tripped the whole
breaker system.
For everyone, including the owners, so.
Yeah, so it was the guy was new, the Hip Camp owner was new, and he said this time next year he's going to have a 50 amp for all of the spots, so that we'll be back. And then in September, Labor Day weekend, we make that big trek down from Spokane, Washington, all the way down to Swan Valley, Idaho, getting to see Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons while we were there. I think the Grand Tetons was our last national park for the year, which marked number 11. And from Swan Valley, we stayed there for 2 weeks. We made it down to Nephi, Utah. I don't know why I can't remember that place, where we got to see her friends out in Salt Lake City.
Is it Nephi?
Nephi. That's what I wanted to call it, was Nephi, but her friend corrected me on this, and it's Nephi, because that's where your friend grew up. From there, 2 weeks in Moab, which was technically more like LaSalle. That's where we stayed, in the LaSalle mountain range. And then we just kind of made that trek, about a 20-minute trek into Moab to go see Arches, and beautiful place. I can't wait to return there.
Arches National Park was our last national park.
Oh, yeah, that is right. Arches was getting a little gusty out here.
Hey, good boy, it's okay.
I know. Kenai, he gets a little afraid by the wind.
Well, come here.
Now we're into October, and this is where we make the trek from Moab or LaSalle, Utah, all the way over to Salida, Colorado. And Salida is beautiful. It's the crossroads of the Rockies. There's so many places that we've been to this year. I just want to take a moment and just say this, that there's a lot of places in the US that is just absolutely stunning. We could have an entire video dedicated to all the places that we've been and why we liked them so much, and why we could even consider having a house there in certain parts of the states. So we stayed in Salida for the entire month, and that was our second longest stay, right at like 28 or 29 nights, versus the first one we stayed in a month in northern Arizona. That was about 35 nights or 34 nights or something like that. Then November, this is when we start officially making the trek back home to see friends and family. We make the trek from Salida, Colorado, all the way to Heavener, Oklahoma, where we stayed for a week, and then to Isla, Georgia, where we stayed for a week before making it eventually to home in North Carolina. Which kind of brings us into our next topic, which is our favorite and least favorite states of the year.
Trey, what's your favorite?
My favorite? She already knows my favorite. She just wants me to say it.
Say it.
Washington. Washington is my favorite state. Not by far, but it is my favorite state. And here's why. As an outdoor enthusiast, it has everything that an outdoorsy person would be interested in. You have coastal national parks in Olympic, which has a national rainforest. You do have Mount Rainier. You do have the North Cascades, just littered with landscape beauty. What about you? What's your favorite state?
Honestly, it was such a difficult question to answer, but if I really had to pick, and this is just solely based off of me picking a place where I know I could thrive and live at, and that has to be Utah. Like, Salt Lake City, I'm not a huge city person, but the people, the vibe, the beautiful constant views, like panoramic everywhere. I could do a whole turn and it was just beautiful mountain views everywhere. I could live there. Everyone was just so friendly. People I didn't know, aside from just my friends, everyone was a whole vibe, and that's somewhere I think I could definitely thrive in.
I think if I had to choose a runner-up, and it wouldn't be a runner-up by much, because the whole western side of the U.S. is beautiful, I would have to go with California, because it's the most diverse state. I mean, you talk about Southern California, Joshua Tree, where it's a desert, all the way up to the northern end, and even the middle end. You have Yosemite, and you have the Sequoia National Park. Beautiful state. Just a little expensive for my end. All right, so least favorite state.
Yes, I could start. My least favorite state, and it's no shade. I could not stand staying another week. It was Oklahoma. That was the most stressful week. I mean, day of we're getting there, a tornado had just barely missed our site where we were going to stay. It was humid AF. I mean, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, we've been out west for so long. The humidity couldn't have been this bad, could it? It was just horrible. Trying to run in that was horrible. But good food, though. Very good food. There was that food truck that we ran into. Great people, amazing, just tasteful, tasty food.
Oklahoma is great for the prices, but in our opinion, that's where it kind of stopped. You had to worry about tornadoes. Like she said, the night before we got there, we were traversing to Oklahoma, and then our host texted us, hey, a tornado just missed you guys by like 8 miles or something like that the night before. So hopefully power is still on. We don't know. And then having to worry about that, then there's not really much else of an attraction there, at least the part that we stayed in Oklahoma. So that's probably gonna be my least favorite state as well. Probably would just use it more as a passing through state, but I don't know. I hate talking trash about people's states, because if you're from Oklahoma, I don't want you to think that you're, we just hate your state. We'll be back, but I just don't know when right now.
It's just mainly the tornadoes. That's just the main cause for concern. But a lot of the people there, if you've grown up there, you're kind of used to it. You know what to do. We don't. We've never had to really essentially worry about that. So it's one of those things where it was completely alien to us and worrisome. Our little home on wheels would not have survived something like that.
Maybe we can storm chase or something.
I would not.
No?
No.
Come on. Let's what do you guys think? Should we storm chase?
No.
Okay, so next up is our favorite and least favorite campgrounds of 2024, because we do have some opinions about some campgrounds. And my favorites, which I separated into two different categories, which was one based on views, and the second favorite was based on
Convenience.
Convenience, that was it, thank you. Which my favorite by views was Kabab Paiute, which was my favorite because they had all the beautiful red rock mesas all around the campground.
It's gorgeous.
And then when the sun rose and the sun set, it was just beautiful. It kind of sits a little higher up, so your campground you kind of get to see over some of the valley into the next mountain ranges. So when the full moon rose or like a sunrise came up, it was just absolutely beautiful. Would definitely stay there again, and that's actually the spot where we got it for $16 a night. You would have to call the front office and kind of have that discount if you were a Good Sam's member. I think they take that as well. So that's how we got it down to $16 a night. So my favorite by convenience is Salida, Colorado. Salida was beautiful in terms of views too. Now it could have been an easy top 3 campground in terms of views because you do have the Rockies all around you. You have Princeton.
The name of the actual campground was called the Applejack RV Park.
That's it.
So that's the one that we stayed at in Colorado, in Salida. Yeah, like you said, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous views. But as far as convenience, what made you feel that it was so convenient?
So the grocery stores is 5 minutes away. They did propane on site, which is very nice. Not a lot of campgrounds offer that we came to find out. So not only was propane on site, but like all the restaurants were nearby as well. So like if you wanted to order pizza to the campground, you could have. We just went and picked it up. And also for the outdoors, mountains or trails are 20 minutes away. And these are some of the world class or even national class hikes. Is that how you say it? National class hikes are 20 minutes away. So
we were very spoiled at that campground.
Very and the owners. Miss Brenda was very nice and very accommodating. So
we can't wait to go back.
We're gonna go back. How about you? What's your favorite of the year?
As far as views go, and this one actually, we only got to stay for just one night because it was all just in passing. I'm pretty sure it was in California, right? Olancha?
Olancha?
Yeah.
That's your favorite?
That one in particular, as far as views, I remember sleeping with my the blinds to my window open, and I don't typically do that. I like being in the darkness.
Jess is a vampire.
So I keep everything closed because the light hurts my eyes. So I remember keeping it open because it was just beautiful mountain views. We were right in front of a lake. I mean, there were snow-capped mountains in the background. It was just absolutely gorgeous. It was so peaceful. It was a small campground. And honestly, probably one of the few that were available to stay in Olancha because it was such a very small town. Barely much. I think there was only 1 or 2 restaurants.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, where we went for breakfast that one morning, it was pretty good.
Yeah. I
couldn't complain, really. I'm a very simple girl, so that was very nice. As far as convenience goes, I had to get me a little cookie. I got a little hungry.
While she's thinking about that, the Olancha campground is also in between Death Valley and Mount Whitney. So it's in that little valley in between there. Beautiful area.
That's why we stayed there. I was I can't remember what we were, and it was for Death Valley. Gosh, incredible. That was absolutely incredible. I also agreed, the campground that we stayed at in Salida, the Applejack RV Park, absolute favorite for convenience. It was the perfect time to really digress and kind of catch up on ourselves and things that I had to get done in the RV itself. It was perfect. We were really spoiled in that RV campground.
Also, at your water hookup, it was heated. So if you want to go in the winter, you'll be fine. All right. So guys, it's time to talk about the bottom of the barrel campgrounds of 2024. And I only have one. That I will there's some that I probably won't go to again.
I was about to say, you should have more than just one. Not many, but more than one.
But there's one in particular, if they just leveled it to the ground, and that's a little harsh, but that's my dispassion for this campground. And that is Russian River. It's part of 1,000 Trails membership, and maybe I'm giving it a little too much hate, but this is the reason why. Is because this was the first campground we came to.
In California, right?
In California, Russian River. They don't have full hookups for any of the sites. It's just water and electric only. Okay, so not only that, but then the campground was bought from 1,000 Trails bought that campground from I think Waco or something like that years ago, and they didn't make any renovations to the sites. So it's designed for primarily, I would say, anything under 30 feet. So if you're going to bring something like a, a big fifth wheel in there or a Class A, just know it's going to be very tight, and the campground itself is pretty uneven, just in general. Like, it's a pretty hilly campground.
And also the trees around, like, they were so cramped. And I mean, if you have Starlink, of course, which is our internet service, you had to kind of maneuver that as best as you could, because so many branches were all in the way. And we particularly try to spend as much time as possible picking out our site to make sure that it's with a clear sky available.
Okay, so you might be saying, Trey, well, big deal, it didn't have, full hookups. Big deal, it was a little tight. If I could get over those two things, it still doesn't give over the fact that there was a homeless camp right outside of the park. Literally on the other side of the gate from the park, there's this homeless encampment.
Right near the entrance.
Right near the entrance, which doesn't have a gate, by the way, so, people can just come and go as they please. We were talking to some of the other campers there, and they didn't like that either. One guy had told me, this is a guy who just kind of travels between two campgrounds back and forth. He's a full-timer as well. He was telling me that they get tickets there at the homeless camp, but the cops can't really do anything about it, and it costs more money to move the rigs and to do everything with the rigs than it does to actually just hand out tickets. So that's another reason I would never return to that spot. And plus, that was the first spot that made us buy our portable tote. We were kind of forced into that, and that was about, what, $250 or $300 or something like that?
Yeah, it was, but I mean, it did come in handy. It was already on our list of things to purchase, so it just came a lot sooner than we were planning.
What about you? What's your least favorite of 2024?
It's no surprise it is also a part of the Thousand Trails membership, but this one was I think it's the one and only in Las Vegas, right? It's the only Thousand Trails park that's available in Las Vegas, and I wouldn't even call it a park. It was more like a parking lot of just cramped, like literally side to side RVs. Like, your slides were like inches from touching each other. We lucked out with the site that they assigned to us because it was in a corner, but even with being next to a corner, our neighbor, like, our slides were touching, almost touching. But people don't really smile at you or, say hello to you, especially even if after I think it was our neighbor, we had tried to greet them because we made eye contact for a good considerable amount of time, and there were no pleasantries exchanged, which is fine. We mind our own business, but it was just interesting. And for me, our schedules are a bit different when it comes to work, so we typically try to work out together, but if it doesn't work out, I'll go by myself. I would not feel comfortable going alone by myself running, even if it's within the actual campground. I just wouldn't. And even after looking up some reviews about that specific park, there were a lot of theft complaints. So it was just something that I was like, okay, we definitely want to make sure we keep an eye out. And we only stayed for one night, but one night was plenty. And
luckily.
We definitely would not want to come back. That was my least favorite. Russian River would have been definitely neck and neck, but that was around the time that I went to go visit my family for a week, and I got to go to one of our good friends' wedding. So you had to endure a lot of that on your own, but
I was happy to get out of there. Like, absolutely, just, the morning of, I was counting down hours to get out of that place.
Yeah, so not our favorites. Who knows, maybe they might, I don't know. I don't think that they'll have any changes or renovations, but we wouldn't even want to risk it. All
right, so enough with the negativity. What are some of your favorite national parks of the year? Let's say favorite national park of the year.
That's hard. We went to so many, and there were so many I loved. I mean, I liked Zion. I liked Olympic was amazing.
Olympic was nice.
Was just, that's where we saw our first bear ever.
First black bear.
Black bear, not grizzly. I don't know if we would have made it out if it was a grizzly. But
running.
It was absolutely incredible. It was gorgeous. I am a huge simp for meadows. I love meadows, and Do you remember the hike that we took in Olympic?
I don't remember the name of it. I can just, we'll find it out though.
Just because it was absolutely incredible. For a first hike and first introduction to Olympic National Park, that was just jaw-dropping to me. So I would have to say that Olympic would be number 1 for me. Number 2, I'm torn between Zion and Arches National Park. And I know we've had some words on that because in Arches, like, you just kind of drive to your actual, small hikes, and you drive up to the actual arches, but at night seeing the stars was just...
Milky Way in Arches is by far something you have to go to. Like, it's a dark sky national park, so just go check that out if you can.
Yeah, and then of course Zion, that was the most iconic national park that you could go to. You see it everywhere online, but it's a completely different experience getting to see it yourself in person. So
to drive in, is it Carmel or
Carmel Road?
Carmel Road. Take that where you always see the famous on Instagram.
Carmel Road or Carmel Highway?
It's Carmel Road, I believe.
Carmel Road, right?
So on the Carmel Road, you go through this tunnel, which opens up at the very end of the tunnel. When you finally enter into Zion, it opens up and to just this panoramic, beautiful red cliffs. It's the most dramatic thing I have seen in a national park.
Trey, what was your favorite national park?
So my favorite, and again, not by much, but Yosemite. Yosemite.
Yosemite.
I call it, is it Yosemite?
That's how you
I was actually about to say it Yosemite, but so Yosemite is my favorite. Now, let me give some context here, because we had just spent 4 months, the first 4 months that we were on the road, we spent it in a desert style climate, down in Big Bend, Texas, all the way over to Southern California. We were in the desert. And so the first time I've seen greenery again, I was born and raised in greenery here in North Carolina. And the first time I got to see greenery again was in Yosemite, getting to see the fir trees, getting to see the sequoias. Beautiful. Getting to see rivers again. And that was just at the campground that we stayed at. Like, it was full of the Ponderosa pines, all that good stuff. So when the weekend after we arrived in Yosemite, we get to go see Yosemite National Park. And that was amazing. Getting to see El Capitan for the first time, getting to see Half Dome, Bridal Falls, all the different aspects that make Yosemite. Gorgeous. We hiked the John Muir Mist Trail, which we hit it at the right time of the year, which is another theme I think for last year. We hit like almost everything as everything was opening up.
But in contrast to that, we also had to turn back around and not complete a lot of the trails just because of the time of the year that we went. The snow was just unbelievable. He would have risked it. I would not. So that's the main and only reason we would like to turn around. I always win those type of arguments.
But we got to Yosemite right as the snow melts were feeding the waterfalls. So it was just very lush in terms of liquid flowing in Yosemite.
Yes, it was a very large waterfall.
So that would be my favorite with Yosemite. Close second, I mean, I don't know, man. There's a lot of number 2s in my book. The Grand Tetons, Zion, Olympic. I feel like the Grand Tetons don't make it as high on the list because that was our 11th national park. And by that point in time in the year, we were kind of...
Wow.
The grandioseness of everything had kind of waned a little bit. So when we saw the Tetons, it was like, oh, that's another beautiful national park versus...
For you, speak for yourself. I was absolutely mind blown. I was just beside myself with all of the beauty. I mean, Jenny Lake was absolutely gorgeous. I was worried about the grizzlies because you see signs everywhere, but even despite that, we had such an incredible time. That's the first time we saw a huge moose for the first time in person. I mean, I will always hold
size of horses.
Yeah, I will hold the Grand Tetons close to my heart always. We're actually wanting to see about getting married there, so TBD, we'll see how that works.
I think that's where we're going to tie the knot, is in the Grand Tetons. Out in Jackson somewhere. I don't know. Little, sip my wine with my pinky up. So, with all of that we just discussed, what kind of lessons have we learned throughout the year? What was your biggest takeaway lesson-wise?
I was about to say, I learned plenty, but my biggest lesson has to be walking your site no matter what. I don't care how late it is. I don't care if it's too dark. Get a flashlight, put a headlamp on, and walk it. Check it out. Check out other sites to see if it would be better for you. Just always walk it.
That's fair. There's a lot of times we had to hitch back up to the truck and readjust because one, we didn't measure how long our slides are, and to like where the sewage and the electrical, if the electrical works.
If the electrical works, that's
all
a
that good
huge
stuff.
one. We're almost done getting ready to set up, and by the time we're about to plug our power cord in, it's dead.
So that's walk your site and make sure everything works. Would probably, before you unhitch, is probably one of the biggest lessons of the year.
Was that yours too?
Mine would be don't arrive no later than 3 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing good this last year in 2024 has come from arriving in the dark. That's where I broke the glass from jackknifing the truck against the RV, the back glass of the truck. A lot of things bad has happened in the dark where we have caused to have to either reset up the next day or have a ton of repairs. So that was some of the biggest takeaways. Walk your site before you unhitch, and try not to get there after 3 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. You'll thank yourself a little bit later. It's getting a little chilly in here, so I am going to go turn on some heat real quick. Let's see. Jess and I just got a new heater, so we have one in the bedroom, we have one out here, and then we have the electric fireplace. And with all three, we can keep it about 70 to 75, even on a cold night. Because it's supposed to be down to like 17 degrees a night.
Burr.
It's going to be cold. Yes. So.
Burr indeed.
But I think with all three of them, we won't have to run the propane as much, which would be nice. So we just talked about our biggest lesson of the year. And now I want to talk about our biggest struggles of the year.
Ooh.
Because
what did you struggle with?
I struggled, ironically, with being away from friends and family for the entire year.
Ironically?
Because, I moved up to Charlotte away from my family whenever I was 21. And for the past decade, I've been up in Charlotte, North Carolina, away from my friends and my core group of, or away from my family, away from my family and my core group of friends. So I didn't think I was going to struggle with it as much as I did, but this year has proved to me that you can't just do everything on your own without seeing friends or being connected or having some kind of social. I don't know why I'm lisping today, but trying to have some kind of social circle moving in 2025 would be very beneficial to me and my well-being. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little difficult being away from home, but I just frequently FaceTime with my family, my friends, for sure. Just kept up, and I texted them every single day. It was tough. I think this year might be a little tougher for me just because we're not going to be coming back home for the holidays, and the holiday time is really something that means a lot to my family and myself as included, but we'll see how I deal with that.
Yeah. So that's probably my biggest struggle, and we're going to find ways to work around that and work with that, All right, Jess, favorite moment of the year? Just one.
Oh my gosh. I feel like there was just, again, like so many. I'd say one of my favorite moments was really just sitting in front of a campfire. We were in Yosemite. It was Yosemite Valley. And it was one of the few times where we were able to have a campfire, because over on that side,
a lot of fire bans.
Which understandably so. But it's just such a cozy feeling. I was able to bring out a book, and I, have like a cup of coffee, and we were sitting out by the water, just enjoying a nice little fire. It was so peaceful. That has to be one of my favorites.
Yeah. And, like you said, there was a ton of moments, whether it was in Zion, whether it was in California, anywhere had a good moment associated with it, I would say.
Yeah.
But my all-time favorite would probably be when we stayed in Moab, and this was early September, so it was late Milky Way season. So as soon as the sun went down, the Milky Way would come out, and you didn't have to stay out till like 3 a.m. to see it, which was super nice. We went to Arches National Park. I think this was our second time going to Arches National Park, and we went there purely to go shoot the Milky Way. And you had brought, we had brought a lantern out. You had brought your iPad out to read.
Mm-hmm.
I brought the camera just to go shoot, and didn't really do much video or anything like that. It was just purely just to go hang out, shoot some photos, and watch the Milky Way come over. And we were up under the double arch the entire time, which was pretty cool.
It was honestly another unforgettable experience and so peaceful.
Okay, this is a good one. The most RV friendly state, and in my opinion, this would go to Arizona and New Mexico. And here's a few reasons why. One, usually every campground, or at least the ones we've been to, have wide open spaces at the campgrounds. They usually have fairly decent sized sites, which, one of the things I can't stand is being cramped up. Like the one in Vegas, like you were talking about earlier. I like having my own space, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't get into the RV world just to be cramped up into everybody else. And secondly, with the open skies down in Arizona and New Mexico, Starlink is going to be your best friend, and that's the internet provider we use. I think there's some other choices out there now, and they're starting to come along, but we just went with Starlink. And knowing Starlink, you have to have pretty close to a unobstructed view of the sky. If you have like one tree out there, it will screw up everything. So those two states are going to be the best for Starlink.
For sure, yeah. I mean, do keep in mind the time of the year that you do go to visit, because the heat could be very, very
brutal.
Yeah. So during the time that we went, it was March? Mm-hmm. Around March or April. Very good time of the year to go. It was still chilly. Windy, very windy, but definitely would rather deal with that than the heat for sure.
Mm-hmm. And another reason is that Arizona and New Mexico, when you pass through, have a ton of just drive-through RV and truck washes, which, I didn't know this going into the RV life, that, washing your rig at campgrounds is frowned upon. Most campgrounds prohibit that. Mm-hmm. I think it might just be water usage, and if I did wash their RVs there, everything would be muddy on the ground. But outside of that, I'm not really sure why they don't allow it. But having to find somewhere, especially if you're going to live full time, you don't have a residence to bring your RV back to and wash it during the off season, it's kind of hard to wash your rig or find a spot to wash your rig. You kind of have to either just do like a dry wash, or just kind of let it build up and get dirty, which I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah, we're not.
And another reason is that there are a ton of RV repair shops in Arizona and New Mexico, which you don't see a lot of in other states. So in other states, it's kind of few and far between. They do have them, but it's not as frequent as New Mexico and Arizona.
It's very convenient, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Also, this is probably one of my favorite reasons, is that outside of the Starlink thing, is that the intersections are very wide. They have very wide roads. The shoulders on the highways are, they have some depth to them. So if you need to pull off on the shoulder of the highway, you can. I mean, to the point where if you just want to spend a night on the shoulder of the highway, you probably could. We did that coming back east in Oklahoma, and the shoulder of the road was very slim, and every time a transfer truck would pass by, the whole thing would just shake.
So on that side, for sure, they're a lot wider. Getting closer to the east, not so much.
Yeah, but with that said, we haven't really explored New Mexico a whole lot. Like I said, we stayed there for a night, but it seems like a beautiful state, and we would love to go back and explore more of New Mexico. All right, so 2025, what does the schedule look like? And one thing I can say for now is that we are going to ditch our membership of Thousand Trails. That's who we've been using. We used it for about 8-9 months of the year last year.
Don't get us wrong. It came in handy. For our first year, it was worth it. Now we know what to expect. Mm-hmm. But that being said, we will not renew.
We will not renew. Now, to start with some of the pros of Thousand Trails, it will save you money, don't get me wrong, but they do kind of sucker you into some more upgraded packages which allow you to go to park. And if you're not really concerned about views or anything like that, Thousand Trails will probably be a good spot for you. If you're just looking for somewhere just to park, for example, that's probably going to be a good opportunity for you. That and maybe KO. I'd prefer KOA over Thousand Trails, just from what I've seen of KOA. Like the Grandy Creek up in Washington, KOA, beautiful. And some of the Thousand Trails, I don't know, did you have a favorite Thousand Trails?
To be completely honest, no. I mean, as far as convenience in the sense of like, bigger spaces, like Alamo, the one in Alamo, Texas was pretty spacious. Mount Hood was nice, but you kind of have to look out and make sure you get one of the pull-through sites because the other sites available were a lot more cramped and closer to your respective neighbors, but not really, no.
Yosemite Village, where we stayed in Yosemite. Now that Thousand Trails was fairly nice.
But again, you have to get there and look out with the spaces that you get.
So the sites, if you've ever been or if you plan on going, the sites closest by the river, those are full hookup. The ones away from the river are not, and you'll know what I mean when you get there and see the site map. But that was probably one of my favorites, is Yosemite Village, because proximity to Yosemite itself was only like, I think, 5 miles away from the entrance.
It's that, yeah.
And it has a store literally right up the road from it. And that's where you found your barbecue chicken pizza factory spot, which you loved. Yeah.
Love that pizza spot. I can't wait to go back and get some barbecue chicken pizza.
I just love the area out there. So that one I probably would return to. And again, this is for all this advice is just coming from the perspective of a full-timer. If you're a part-timer and you don't have to worry about, sewage or anything like that, because you can just drive back home and empty it, or just out on your way out, go empty it out somewhere at a dump station, then you probably won't have as much of an opinion about Thousand Trails as we do, I would say. But for full-timers, months of not having a full hookup, or in which we did go through that at a certain point, we were just using our tote for months on end. I think it was mainly through summer. It was when we were in Washington, because nothing is full hookup up there at Thousand Trails wise. Because we didn't stay long term, at least for like a week. We didn't stay anywhere else beside Thousand Trails in Washington.
We did do a few hip camps. But you also just kind of have to be careful. On the hip camp website, they state that it's included, but they're actually not. You get there and the host said that she was fine with us draining our gray water tank out on her lawn.
Yeah,
but that's not a full hookup. So that was something to just kind of watch out for. I'd look at reviews and see if anybody, mentions it. I think she was pretty new to it, so there weren't many reviews for us to really go base an opinion on. But yeah, you'll find it very, very difficult to find a full hookup in Washington, Oregon area.
So the main reason we did Thousand Trails was, of course, to save money on campgrounds, but this is also going to allow us to stay at local campgrounds, and because I love being able to meet the owner of the local campgrounds. So our last Thousand Trails was end of August, and ever since then we actually got to meet, I think, 80 or 90% of the owners of everywhere else we stayed. And it's crazy to hear the stories of how they started the campground, what inspired them to, because a lot of them are former full-timers who just bought a piece of land and got started. One in Swan Valley, Idaho, they bought an old airport hangar, converted it into a campground, and it was nice, beautiful place. And actually we got to walk the dogs along the old I guess airstrip where the planes were landing, and that was nice because it's a long road or a long airstrip, and the dogs just had a great time just being able to run up and down it. Some of the intangibles that you don't get with traditional just memberships campgrounds. But I'm excited to share with you guys our 2025 schedule and the things that we can share with you right now. We don't have it down to the exact campgrounds we're going to stay at just yet, but we do have mostly the regions and some of the routes that we're going to take. So if we're in your area, just comment down below which part of the country that you're in watching this from. So let's see here. First stop is going to be down in Big Bend. We do know that. It's going to be down in Big Bend for 3 weeks. And then after that, we head over to Arizona. We get to go see the Grand Canyon because we're not missing it this time.
Refuse to miss it this time. It is going to happen. That's it.
we're not going to stay at the Indian Reservation we stayed at earlier this year. We're going to try to stay on the southern entrance between Flagstaff and the Grand Canyon, somewhere around that area. We're going to be in. And then from there, we go over to Yosemite again, which I'm excited for. We actually have some friends who are going to meet us out in Yosemite, and I cannot wait to just see their faces when they see El Capitan or any of the things we saw and inspired us last year.
It's going to be great.
And then from there, we are going to try to make a trek to Montana for the summer. And in between that, that looks like going through Salt Lake City and possibly back up to the Tetons for about a month or so. And we didn't get to see Glacier last year, but that's our end goal for the summer. That's where we want to spend summer. And maybe a trip or two into Banff, Canada this year, because it's going to be right there.
It's right there.
And then we spend summer there, and then in the fall, we head over to the Pacific Northwest, because I really want to see fall up there or over there.
Trey really wants to live out his Twilight life.
And I do. In context, I've never seen Twilight.
So we will be watching Twilight.
What's that song called?
Hoa, hoa,
Yeah, the Hoa Hoa song.
You know what I'm talking about. Please don't leave me hanging.
So we're going to spend the fall in the Pacific Northwest. And how about winter?
TBD on winter.
TBD on winter. We have two options. Either we want to go back down to Salida, Colorado, where we had a great experience with Miss Brenda over at Applejack RV Park, or we could do like southern Utah, like Zion area, somewhere around there, to get to spend some of the winter in the snow, which I personally love. The Red Rocks snow covered. We saw Bryce in the snow. Absolutely gorgeous.
Bryce Canyon was beautiful in the snow. First snow hike ever for me. That was eye-opening. It was beautiful. I wouldn't mind. I'm having a hard time deciding.
Yeah, full-timers, guys, where should we spend winter at in the RV? So that's Southern California, Baja California, I don't know. But guys, help us out.
Please.
I, for one, am excited to be back in the RV, and we're excited to be gearing up for the 2025 season and to see what stories we can tell on the road this year. So we have a few videos before we even hit the road that we're going to release, as far as like how we're going to reorganize the RV and a few other things. It's about exploring our hometown. So if you're new here and haven't caught up with the channel just yet, between now and next Sunday, because we are back to weekly uploads, go check out our freshman year playlist to catch up on all the things that you've missed. And we'll see you next week in the next video. So peace, much love, and we'll see you in the next one.